What's up, ladies and gentlemen? As you can see by the name of this video, this will be very different than the videos I usually make. I want to talk about something that has a very big influence on me, as well as millions of other fans around the globe. I am, of course, referring to the podcasting scene in Los Angeles, California. Thanks to Joe Rogan and some of his closest friends, I've been able to enjoy thousands of hours of free entertainment for nearly a decade. Unfortunately, we are witnessing the end of an era. Now, I know most of my subscribers don't know that much about me, so let me tell you how my journey as a podcast fan began. This will help explain why I decided to make this video in the first place. Back in 2011, I was working for a company that cleaned out these giant industrial-size ovens. These ovens can be found inside factories all over the United States. While I worked for this company, we would travel all over the country to states like Indianapolis, Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, New Jersey, Kentucky, California, and many other states. Since it was a company based on the East Coast, we would drive to all these different states to work in these factories unless it was California. That was the only state we would fly to. Now, since we spent so much time on the road, I would have to find things to do when we were in the work van or in our hotel room. I can't even begin to tell you how many hours I spent in that van. We would be working on the road nearly 300 days out of the year. Now, I love listening to music or watching movies just as much as the next guy, but after a while you do get bored. I know I did, therefore I had to find something else to keep my mind occupied. At this time, I believe I had an iPhone 3, and on this phone was an application for podcasts. This is when I first discovered what they even were. I should also say, I have always been a big fan of comedy. Ever since I was around the age of 13, I would watch stand-up comedians like Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, and so on and so forth. So, as soon as I found out stand-up comedians had their own podcast shows, I was instantly hooked on phonics. And this is when I found the Joe Rogan Experience. I've been a fan since Brian was on the show, and they would film episodes out of the back of the ice house. Finding this show back then was exactly what I needed in my life. It almost instantly became one of my favorite things to listen to. In fact, I would say it even influenced me into making videos of my own. Even now, I would say I listen to more podcasts than I do music, which is kinda crazy to think about. There was really nothing else like it out there that you could find for free. Now, I know one of Joe Rogan's biggest influences was the Opie and Anthony show, but that was not a show that was offered for free. Neither was Howard Stern for that matter. Those shows were on Sirius XM. And even some of the other great podcasters did not have a show quite like Joe's. Mark Maron and Adam Carolla had big shows at the time, but they were still doing your interview-style shows. The Joe Rogan Experience was very different. It felt very natural, as if you were hanging out with your own friends. One of the main reasons it felt like this is because Joe would have all of his best friends on the show. He never brought them on to interview them either. They would all just talk about whatever they wanted. Whenever I would watch or listen to one of his new episodes, I felt like I was a fly on the wall. It felt like I was listening to my own friends have a conversation. This is what made the show so great for me. Now, I will admit, I don't listen to every single episode that is released, but I do see most of them. If you're a big fan like I am, then you will know Joe has a handful of friends that are on his show nearly once a month. If he does one of his fight companions, then he might have some of his friends on several times that month. It just depends on how things work out. And this is what led to me becoming a fan of some of his other friends who are stand-up comedians like Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, Joey Diaz, Bryan Callen, Theo Vonn, and so many others. My favorite episodes are when Joe has on the OGs from back in the day, like his best friends. So, as soon as everyone started to realize how successful Joe's show was becoming, they all started shows of their own. Joey Diaz started the Church of What's Happening Now, with his sidekick Lee Syatt. Then Bryan Callen started The Fighter and the Kid, with the former UFC fighter Brendan Schaub. Theo Vonn also has his own show, This Past Weekend. Because of the Joe Rogan Experience, I became a fan of all these other comedians and their own respective shows. One of the things I loved about this group of friends is how they built this community with one another. But this is all about to change. The stand-up comedy and podcasting scene in Los Angeles, California will never be the same. Now, I will say, there are a lot of things that do factor into all of these changes. Before I go any further and speculate on anything, I do want to make sure everyone keeps this in mind. I am simply an outsider looking in. Obviously, I don't know any of these guys in real life. I'm only a fan who wants to give his opinion on what's happening lately. Now, if you're watching this video, then I assume you already know Joe Rogan is moving out of Los Angeles. He has already had a new studio made in Texas where he will be living for the foreseeable future. I was actually watching Joe's show right before I sat down to make the video, and in his most recent episode, he sat down with his friend Duncan, and according to Joe, he says he does not think giant cities like Los Angeles are sustainable. When the city is running great, then things are wonderful. Before COVID-19, the Comedy Store was sold out almost every night, the restaurants were full, and the economy was much better. Joe said that's when Los Angeles can be a fun city to live in. But he also said when things go bad, there is no sense of community. So Joe's leaving for Texas. Since Joe was the glue that was mostly holding the community together, it has shattered now that he's leaving. This is how much influence he has on the scene in LA. Once Joe's living in Texas, he won't have the same access to all the familiar faces we are used to seeing on his show. His show also won't be on YouTube for much longer. Now that he has signed the big deal with Spotify, his show will be uploaded there starting in December. Now he will still upload some of his clips to YouTube, but it won't be his full episodes like it has always been. Now I'm sure Joey Diaz, Theo Vonn, Bert Kreischer, and many of Joe's other friends will still do the show, but it won't be like it was. They won't be able to stop in at the drop of a hat like they used to. When they have a comedy show to do in Texas, I'm sure they will appear on the show, but that might only be a handful of times a year. The Joe Rogan Experience will still be a fun watch, as always, but I am afraid it will not be the same. How often do you really see Joey Diaz booking a flight to Texas just to do the podcast? He doesn't even like driving across LA to do someone else's show, let alone flying across the country. How often will Brendan Schaub and Eddie Bravo be able to join Joe for his fight companions once he's in Texas? I don't know about you, but I love when Eddie Bravo is on the show. Even when he's talking about his conspiracies, I love it. Unfortunately, I don't think Eddie will be on the show that often anymore. I did hear that Joe Rogan made Joey Diaz some kind of offer to move to Texas with him, but for whatever reason, Joey Diaz obviously declined. And it looks like Joey Diaz has already moved out of Los Angeles. Last night on Joe Rogan's show, he said he talked to Joey, who already was back in his home state of New Jersey. As of right now, Joey Diaz's show, The Church of What's Happening Now, is over. His sidekick, Lee Syatt, has left Los Angeles as well. I think he said he was moving to Milwaukee for a little while, then moving back to Boston. So, even when Joey Diaz does bring the show back, it won't be the same as it was. Now, I know that some fans of The Church do not like Lee, but I don't agree with that at all. I think he's actually a lovable guy. And whether you like him or not, he was a part of the show, and now he's gone as well. Now you have to wonder what Joey Diaz's show will look like whenever he brings it back. I'm sure Joey will still have great stories to tell like he always does, but will he be able to get people to fly to New Jersey to be on the show? The days of us seeing all the LA comedians joining their friends on their shows will be far and few in between. The Fighter and the Kid is another show that is almost unrecognizable as of right now. Brendan Schaub is still hosting the show, but it doesn't look like Bryan Callen will be coming back, ever. For those of you that don't know, Bryan Callen is one of Joe Rogan's best friends. They've been friends ever since the 90s, and in fact, Joe Rogan has even called Bryan his brother. As of right now, Bryan Callen is in some hot water, ever since some recent accusations have come out against him. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I don't know what happened between them. All I know is this does not look good for Bryan. Ever since those allegations came out, he hasn't been seen on The Fighter and the Kid or Joe Rogan's show. As far as I know, he has been dropped by everyone. His agent let him go, his manager let him go, and so on and so forth. Now this is only a guess, but I think he hasn't been on The Fighter and the Kid for a few different reasons. For one, the comment section would obviously eat him alive. They already have been, even when he's not on the show, but I'm sure they would lose all their sponsors as well. Bryan and Brendan tried to make a new show called The Fighter in the Rinks, which was a Patreon exclusive, but that did not last very long either. I can only assume Brendan's agent, manager, lawyer, or whoever told him it might not be a good idea to host a show with Bryan Callen right now. So as you can see, for one reason or another, some of Joe Rogan's closest friends have already stopped creating shows before he even left Los Angeles. As of right now, The Church of What's Happening Now is over. The Fighter and the Kid is over. Now it's just the former fighter and some random comedian. Another well-known LA comedian and podcaster, Chris D'Elia, has been silent for several months as well. He has also had many different allegations come out against him. He hasn't uploaded anything or been seen on anyone's show since June or early July. Now if Bryan or D'Elia are guilty of those accusations, then they deserve to be held accountable. but until I have all the facts, I will reserve my judgment for a later day. I do, however, wonder if any of this influenced Joe Rogan's decision to leave LA. Not only has comedy been cancelled in the city, but a lot of the comedians he surrounds himself with are getting cancelled as well. Even if this has nothing to do with him leaving, he has to be thinking everything is collapsing around him in Los Angeles. Theo Vonn is another one from this circle of friends who is leaving the city. As far as I know, he will be moving to Nashville very soon. Now that all these comedians are moving away from each other, this will definitely have an effect on all their shows. They will no longer have access to the same caliber of people they once had. The Comedy Store in Los Angeles will also suffer because of this. Before COVID, they had an insane lineup almost every single night, but now a lot of their headliners will be spread out across the United States. Like I said, I'm sure they will still be able to go on each other's shows every now and then, but it will not be the same. I may be speaking for myself here, but I am not a fan of the shows they do over Zoom or Skype or whatever it is they use. It doesn't have the same feeling it does when they're in the same room together. There is a bit of a disconnect when they aren't able to feed off each other's energy like they normally do. Now, as I'm writing some of this down, Joey Diaz ended his show last night, and it was kinda sad to see that show as we know it come to an end. I will be very interested in seeing how things unfold from here on out. I hope we do get some more insight into what is actually happening behind the scenes, because although I do believe COVID is one of the main reasons they are all leaving LA, I don't think it's the only reason. Maybe they're all starting to feel like the walls are closing in around them. Who knows? Regardless of what led to this, it does appear to be the end of an era, my friends. I will be looking forward to seeing who Joe Rogan has on his show now that he will be in Texas. Like I said before, I am just a fan who wanted to give their thoughts on some of the recent developments. If you're a fan as well, let me know what you think down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for watching the video. I really appreciate that, and I hope all of you have a great day. I will see you in the next video. Bye.